All right, welcome back to the Ball and Breakfast podcast. I'm Patrick Miller, alongside Wayne Poix, bringing you another rendition. We've covered the major three sports: baseball, basketball, football. We're going to go back to basketball, and this episode will be more retrospective. Wayne and I are both kids of the 90s. We have a lot of favorite players growing up and throughout the 2000s, and we just wanted to have an episode where we actually rehash on our personal top 10 favorites. They may not go in exact order of ranking or anything like that, but just a way for us to kind of, reflect and pay our respects to the guys that, paved the way for the, young guys in the game today. Just to plug too, we're still looking for, your follows, your likes, your comments, any sort of reviews on, social media channels that we have out there right now. We're on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. You can find us on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts as well. Really, any sort of feedback's helpful, good or bad, and we're just glad that you're here today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Wayne to kick it off, and he's going to give us two of his favorites from his top 10, and we'll go back and forth just like that.
Cool. Thanks, Pat. Yeah, so my first two right off the bat, my first one here is, I'm one of those people. I like Duke. I like Duke University. I was cheering for Coach K, during this NCAA finals or Final Four here. Really wanted him to win the championship and all. But so my first player here, kind of the ultimate 3-and-D player, I would say, Shane Battier. Can shoot the three but was definitely much more known for his defense, maximized his efforts there. I remember his battles. For all the Kobe lovers out there, I just remember him battling Kobe essentially, and really kind of giving him some fits. He'll drop 30 right on him because he dropped 30 on anybody. But it was a little bit harder. It was a little bit harder with Shane Battier, I felt like. So Shane Battier was definitely one of my favorite type of kind of glue guys. I guess I was cheering for him. Like, okay, glad he won the championship with the Heat and all that. But definitely was cheering when the Spurs beat them for sure. So got that one out of the way. But really liked his effort and play. I know he won some games with the Rockets too. Really. I think he had that winning streak, and a lot of it had to do with just his overall play on the defensive side and making smart plays overall. So, was truly a maximizer on his talent overall. Next one on my list would be one of my favorite shoes, the T-Mac 2s, the Tracy McGrady. Scoring machine. Definitely, you can't talk about him without talking about the 13 points, 33 seconds. Against the San Antonio Spurs. If you haven't seen that, go on YouTube and definitely watch that. It's amazing what he was able to do, willing his team to win that game. So, maybe didn't do so well in the playoffs, but was able to, especially during the regular season, just put on the points. Like there was, you look at his game, like there was just no weakness with regards to his game overall. So, if you were to build a player, a guard, it would basically be someone like Tracy McGrady. You can definitely knock him on whatever his work ethic. I know they call him the big sleep and all that because he slept a lot and just chilled. But really liked his overall talent, what he brought to the table. Really wish we could have seen what would happen if him and Vince Carter stuck around with the Raptors. Had a lot of what ifs too with the Orlando Magic when he signed with them and Grant Hill, and then almost Tim Duncan as well. So definitely a lot of what ifs in his career, and had, caught the injury bug later in his career. So really couldn't finish it off strong, but, made the Hall of Fame and all. So, and with all that, like, hey, Pat, what do you think about my first two right now?
I love your first two, both players. I mean, Battier, for the reasons you outlined, I always felt like he was just the true gamer, the true team player, a guy that you could bring off the bench. You could slot him into your, 3 spot, 4 spot, whatever it was on the floor as a starter as well. It was just his willingness to just play for every team he was a part of and just kind of give it all, for the game of basketball was something that, I always appreciate it because in today's NBA and even then, I mean, you had guys that, didn't always want to work hard or, didn't want to, dive on the floor for a loose ball or, give up their scoring, prowess to be, kind of a defensive stopper. And I feel like Shane just left his ego at the door wherever he went, and he was a consummate professional. Tracy McGrady, he was almost like the top icon in basketball for, a good 5-year run there. I felt like with the Magic, like you were saying with the shoes, a story that I had in high school I always thought was funny was there was a guy who in our school was, middle to low income or what have you. But there was one kid that told me that every week he would save up a good portion of his lunch money and he would kind of stash it away. So he would, have like $2 that he would spend like exclusively on, a couple items at food. And then he had $3 every day that he would just scoot away for his, McGrady fund. And he bought the blacks and the blues. And I was just like, You gotta, appreciate that hustle. But the one thing I was going to add, I mean, I think you covered him pretty well, but it would have been nice to see him also sign with the Bulls that off season where him and Grant were both looking for destinations. I was still young then, and at that time, I didn't really know who Tracy was, but it was kind of like the way they were building him up in the press was like, he's this young kid who's got tons of potential and he'd be a great fit on this Bulls team. And, it didn't happen, but what could have been, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in a way I feel like that's just Tracy McGrady's career is like, what ifs, right? What if he did sign with the Bulls and then, all these things transpired and all that. So what if he didn't get injured, et cetera, et cetera. So, but yeah, he's definitely one of my favorites overall for sure.
That sounds good. I guess to start it off with my two, first guy I'm going to throw out there, his career stat line is 8 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 assists per game. He was somebody who just stood out to me as a scrapper, somebody with a defensive mindset, somebody who's, going to get in your face, is going to make it, kind of be an annoyance, kind of like your modern day Patrick Beverley. But my number 10 is Matt Barnes. I always like this guy. I can't put my finger on it exactly, but with the 2006-2007 Warriors team that, knocked off the number 1 Mavs team that year with Dirk and Steve Nash, it was Barnes, it was Jason Richardson, Baron Davis, Steven Jackson. I think they had Beadrins and Michael Pietrus as well off the bench, but it was just one of those teams that, you just want to show up to the park with, 5-on-5, and you might have a star on the other side of the court or what have you, but those 5 just had, such good synergy together and just played the right way. And, knocking them off in 6 in the first round was just, one of my all-time favorite basketball series in the NBA, just watching that start to finish. And Matt kind of continued on, he bounced around from, Phoenix to Orlando. I think we all kind of remember when Kobe, was guarding him, at the other side of the inbound stripe, and Matt tried to fake him out, and Kobe didn't really move. But I think that's like an iconic Kobe thing. But in the same way, I think it was a bond that him and Matt built while they were going through that moment. Where when Kobe was asked, what he thought about bringing Matt Barnes into the Lakers for that one time period, it was a definite yes. And I think that it's just kind of his swagger, the way that I play when I played pickup in basketball, I always kind of try to emulate Matt Barnes, at least later on after high school in men's leagues. Played for a couple of teams that had a lot of good shooters, and I just had to find a way to, really add value. So it was, grabbing rebounds, it was, going for steals. It was, getting in somebody else's, comfort zone, getting in their space, just kind of being a disruptor. And, I think the funniest story about Matt Barnes, post-career was this whole Derek Fisher debacle with his wife at the time, and just kind of the level of craziness this guy was willing to go to. So I think the story goes is that he called Gilbert Arenas and he said, "Hey, I know, Derek Fisher's at my house." So he got all fitted up in a sweatsuit and put on a beanie and basically, trespassed in his own house and, threw some punches on Derek Fisher. So just like, just like that mindset of, just really attacking, I always appreciate with that guy. So he's number 10 on my list. My other favorite, probably equally as, probably on that same wavelength, that same, let's call it just kind of attitude, like space would be Ron Artest. I love Ron Artest. I feel like, we can all acknowledge his shortcomings. We all know, the things he's done wrong, and maybe, he probably was a huge pain for the guys that he played with over the course of his career. But I take it all the way back to when he came out of St. John's, and he was a first-round pick for the Bulls. And just watching him with the team that was just absolutely dreadful, it was so refreshing to watch another guy who was just such a great defender, so much energy, had a lot of offensive potential that he flashed, throughout his career. I think he averaged about 13 points a game, when it was all said and done. But, I think one of the biggest regrets I had as a Bulls fan growing up was watching him and Brad Miller get packaged together to the Indiana Pacers for Jalen Rose, Travis Best. I was heartbroken at the time because I felt like Brad Miller was so seriously underrated, but it was more about Artest and kind of seeing the star power that he had. And, to kind of get back, Jalen in his twilight was just, it just wasn't enough. So, he blossomed, from that point on. And, the Malice of the Palace is always like that big, overarching event in his career that just kind of, has kind of tarnished him over time. But I really do feel that if that team in 04-05 where the Pacers were to all be on the same court together from start to finish, we could have been watching an NBA champion that year from Indiana. So I'll just stop there. Wayne, do you have any reactions to the first two?
I love it. No, yeah. They're both dogs, man. They're both dogs. Like they both attack and all. Like they have a little attitude, and I love it. Right? Like you need those players on your team, I think, right, in order to win. And I think that's one thing Kobe has acknowledged, and it's like, yeah, that there's a reason why he got both of them or played with both of them, right? Is because he knows that you need to have those players that are just going to get messy, but then still have enough skill set to like score, shoot an open three, make some easy transition layups or dunks and stuff like that. So, and then obviously defend, some of their best players overall. So you need defensive wings in this league in order to win games. So, and Barnes and Ron Artest were two of probably some of the best ones during that time. So, no, I love it. And yeah, I llove that you mentioned the whole trade. Like, I think initially, like they were talking about the Bulls needing scoring, and it's like, yeah, but you're going to trade Ron Artest and Brad Miller. Like these guys, I think both of them, or at least Brad Miller, I think he became an all-star. Ron Artest, he might have, or was a kind of a quasi all-star, right? So it was like, why? So, yeah, I was definitely not happy about that trade for like, a season or two with Jalen Rose. So, but no, I love both of your picks there.
Sounds good. You want to kick off your next two?
Cool. Yeah. So my next two, my first one here is just one of the best, one of my favorite human beings, I would say, just in general, has started hospitals overseas in his home country. And, on the court is like a tremendous defensive player, has a great personality, larger than life, if you will. Dikembe Mutumbo. Love him. Love his commercials. I love how they're able to capitalize his own no thing and all that. I know people make fun of him like saying his voice is like the Cookie Monster, which I'm like, oh, that's awesome. But he kind of just owns it. It seems like he's never had a bad day in his life. Just enjoys life. Sees like this as a platform so that he can do better things. Right, his NBA career. So really admire him as a person and. His defensive prowess, I love it. His attitude. And I admired when his Denver Nuggets beat the number one seed. When they were the 8th seed. So was definitely has that underdog mentality to like just conquer all and all. So really liked him there, and I was definitely cheering for him. With Allen Iverson. When he was the 76ers against those dominant Lakers. So And, he also later in his career did a lot of tremendous things with the Rockets. I know when Yao Ming was injured a bunch, he was one of the proponents to that big winning streak that I think I mentioned earlier with the Rockets. So definitely brought that that defensive mindset towards the paint and helped elevate teams tremendously. So kind of like, yeah, back in the day, like, or, you know, maybe more modern day, it was like the Rudy Gobert, just like eating the paint and, getting offensive rebounds and dunking it back in or laying it back in. So really admire Dikembe Mutumbo overall. My next player, I'm going to go back to another Dookie, the best 3-point shooter in college basketball history, JJ Redick. He definitely had some ups and downs in his careers. I think early on in his career, struggled a lot, just didn't have the physicality that was needed to play in the NBA. And then he got built. Like, I remember just seeing like, oh, this guy's got biceps. I see some veins there. So, worked on his fitness more and really dedicated himself, adapted his game more to the NBA. Kind of got better as he got older, actually. Had some career years with the LA Clippers. Just really learned how to utilize his skill set for the modern day NBA. Now he's doing podcasts and is doing a pretty awesome job about that. So really just like, his, dedication to the game persona, and then, now his commentary on the NBA itself right now. So, so that's my two. What are your thoughts on those two players, Pat?
Yeah, Dikembe was the ultimate stopper, in the early 90s. I think Jordan might have gotten him once and given him his own finger wag or what have you. But he just always kind of seemed like the perennial all-star who was just your pure rim protector. If you had Dikembe on the floor with you, there weren't going to be any easy buckets. So, much respect to him and what he did over the course of his career. JJ Redick, the one memory that I had, and this was kind of, at a time where 3-pointers weren't so commonplace in the way that they are in today's NBA, where, it almost seems like everybody's attempting the 3 first and then going to settle for the 2. When Redick was at Duke, I remember I was watching probably in high school when he was still a senior. They basically got a steal and brought it down, and it was 4-on-1. It was 4 Dukies, and I can't remember who the other team was, but it was 4-on-1. JJ's got the ball. He's at half court, and I kid you not, he pulled up from about 6 or 7 feet behind the 3-point line. He took the 3 with 3 other guys on his right and left. And like anybody else, you would have just seen, a dribble up to the defender and then a dish pass to, the other guy for a layup. And here he is, he pulls 6 or 7 feet from behind 3-point line and swish. And it was kind of like, JJ, probably as hated as Christian Laettner for a Duke player in his heyday. But, just his ability to compete, kind of, bring an attitude to the court, but also just back it up with pure skill. And from the 3-point line, it was just a pleasure to watch. And I always remember how good, will this guy be when he gets to the pros? Like, I hope he reaches his potential in the pros, because literally one of the best college players I've ever watched. But, like you outlined, he had a lot of, great roles on many teams over the course of the, very long career, but, really established himself.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Really. Yeah. And his podcasts are awesome. So he's definitely taken it to the next level there. So yeah, definitely has that intellect for sure. So yeah, curious now. Yeah. Who are your next 2 now on your list?
Yeah, the next guy I have on my list, he really reminds me of NBA Live 95. A game I used to play on Sega Genesis. Just a role model for little kids. His dad played football. Grant Hill. I loved Grant Hill. Coming out of Duke and settling in with the Detroit Pistons. Going through their, uniform change to the lime, whatever that was, the crazy lime green jerseys with, horse on the front with, flames coming off its head. It was like the iconic jersey for every kid, at my elementary school growing up. But just a class act over the course of his career. He was a 25-6-5 player, true star. Just kind of sad to see what happened to, the height of his career when, he left for Orlando from about 2000 to 2004. He didn't play more than, I don't even want to say half a season. It was almost like those years were pretty much vacant throughout his career. And just, too bad for Orlando, especially when they had McGrady too. But, one thing I actually found out about him going to Orlando was that he was traded for Ben Wallace to Detroit. So, for any people in Detroit that, cried over Grant Hill leaving, you got Ben Wallace back and you got a title with that. So there's your consolation. But truly, when we were talking about McGrady, not signing with the Bulls, Grant was actually the name that I remember, being on our short list, and somebody I was like, oh, he'd be so perfect for Chicago. Like, this would be awesome. So I guess we kind of dodged a bullet. But the one thing I'll say about Grant is that even after he had those hardships in Orlando, he was still able to find himself in Phoenix again with Nash and, Stoudemire, and the 2005 to, I believe it was, 07, 08 Suns. I always found him to be, kind of like a Shane Battier type, like you were saying earlier, just a guy who realized who he was at that point in his career and said, I just want to be productive. I want to be, a team member. I want to be somebody who's going to really, carry us to the next level. And I always felt bad that Phoenix could never really get over that hump because they were so close. But, Grant was always in the mix there. So, he's one of the guys on my list here. And the second guy I have is White Chocolate, Jason Williams. Jason Williams, for me, was kind of a guy that I tried to emulate when I was in 7th grade. So I shaved my head. I put, white boy on my knuckles because he used to, I think he actually has a tat that has wit on one side and e-boy on the other. So it's kind of like when you put it together, you could see it. But he was the definition of cool, no matter, what skin color you are. I mean, I just feel like his compilation videos on YouTube are worth watching today still. There hasn't been a player since him that I look at and say, wow, ball handling, passing ability, wow factor, he was everything, just for showmanship. But, he didn't last long on the Kings. He got dished for Mike Bibby, which for the Kings was a great return. Ultimately, I mean, if it wasn't for, Donaghy and his gambling ring, we'd probably be, talking about the Kings, championship that they won, that season against the, over the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals and then further. But Jason went on to play for the Grizzlies, just still up to his same antics. And I do believe he got a championship ring with the Miami Heat in the Wade Shaq era. So, at least he got his payout at the end, in general, but just a fun, creative player to watch. And, I think his legacy will live on the internet.
Yeah, for sure. I have Jason Williams on my list. He was actually right up on my list here. So, love Jason Williams. I remember, just watching him during the Kings. I'm like, this guy's awesome. Like, he's got to win Rookie of the Year. I know it was during Vince Carter and all that, but I loved watching his games. I was always cheering for him on when he was going against the Lakers. Again, I'm always for the other guy, right? So really wanted them to win, but I agree with the whole Mike Bibby trade, and obviously it worked out for them as much as it could. So Mike Bibby definitely brought them to a different level. So you can't fault that. I admire his career and how he was able to go to the Memphis Grizzlies, and then he kind of got his act together, I think, with Hubie Brown, was able to work with Paul Gasol. And I think Shane Battier was in that team too. And they were able to win some games, and actually, I think they made like the 8th seed or something like that too. So, really put his career together, and then was able to take it to the next level. Yeah. When he joined the Miami Heat and won a championship there. I think, Shaq was kind of famous for saying like, oh yeah, I want a point guard that passes me the ball and all that, right? Like, people forget, like, oh yeah, Derek Fisher, he wasn't really known as a passer. He was like, defender. He was like a 3-and-D point guard, which, you don't hear of too much anymore, right? So, but yeah, I remember watching some clips on him. He like scored, I think he played like a perfect game or something like that during the NBA Finals, and just was really clutch for the Heat during that playoff run. So when they won the championship, so really maximize that. And then I watched some YouTube videos of him now, and he's like playing in rec leagues and still killing it. So he definitely has that love of the game. I think his son's playing too now. So, it's in his blood. Really admire his story, about him working with Randy Moss too. So yeah, love that. It's just basketball is life for him. Like he's like the quintessential person for ball is life. So yeah. And then I guess I can go off to my next one now since we were kind of going off there. So yeah, my next player is Derrick Rose. So former MVP, youngest MVP ever. Obviously, he has that Chicago connection. But I almost just admired him just because of like how he's been able to handle all this, right? Handle all these injuries, handle all this adversity. And man, even to this day, like I'll look at when he scored his career high 50 points with the Minnesota Timberwolves after like the Timberwolves got into an injury bug. They really didn't have any like other point guards on their team when he did that. And then just the pure emotion he had afterwards was like, man, you could just see like all of that effort that he put into all that work. I think he said, like, I worked my ass off here and just crying. Like, oh, I love that game. Like that, I'll watch that game and then Kobe's last game, right? And it's like, man, this is the quintessential moments of like people just balling out, putting everything that they got on that floor right there. So, yeah. And then, I know he joined the Knicks and everything and was able to actually do some things for the Knicks too. Kind of like that 6-man plug and starter at point guard, somewhat recently. So, he's definitely not the same person as he was, but I think he's even said, and I definitely see he's a smarter player, not as, as explosive was like, cause he was as explosive probably as like Russell Westbrook. Right. But he's definitely much more of a finesse player, has a better shot overall. But yeah, definitely just not as explosive, and especially on the fast break and all. So, but still a really solid player, really admire him. Definitely has like that Grant Hill thing, like, oh, what could have been, being the youngest MVP and all, and working with being the hometown hero for the Bulls. Right. But I still love the guy, still love his effort, still love, his personality too. He's a very humble individual. So, yeah, just blessed to have watched some of his games, going to the United Center and seeing him play too, before all these injuries and all. So, yeah, so that's my two right there. And I know I kind of picked one off of you there and still one from you there, but yeah, you have anything to say about Derrick?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to plug episode 2 for all of our listeners to go back and listen to the merits of a super team versus a homegrown team, because the super team was the only thing standing between Derrick Rose's Bulls and a championship. Honestly, that guy was pretty much everything for Chicago when he came out of Memphis, and, was our cornerstone. It was the guy that we got in the lottery, and, we paired him with Noah. I'm stumbling to forget the greats that were part of that Bulls team, but in the same sense, it was Kyle Korver and, some of these other guys, but, just the explosiveness, like you were getting to, some of his dunks, his ability to hit the spot up too. I mean, he was just a fun player to watch. And, it's just kind of sad to see how his career went. I mean, similar feelings to Grant Hill. Maybe that's why he's part of our list, is that you feel like there was so much more that didn't get unlocked because unfairly injuries kind of derailed, the stardom that he possessed. So the one thing I was going to say about Rose, which is kind of funny, but when I was in Chicago a few years ago, it was summertime. I was with my current wife. We were walking down toward the Chicago River and, just crossing a street heading right toward Wacker or what have you. And I look over and I see a guy with a blue Dodgers hat on, white tee and some jeans and a couple friends. And it was Derrick Rose. And I looked at him and we made eye contact. I'm not the kind of guy who's going to maybe yell or, ask for, say his name or something like that. But I just kind of gave him a slight nod and he had a smile on his face and didn't say anything to him, didn't want to bring any attention to him or whatever, because he's Derrick Rose in Chicago. I mean, what's going to happen? But yeah. He just always seemed like a good guy. That's all I'm going to say. It's like, I think even if I said, hey, Derrick, I think you probably would have stopped and whatever, signed an autograph, took a picture, whatever it is these days that, people ask for. But just that in itself was kind of like, I kind of like in my looking at it was like kind of like welcome home. You're always welcome here. Like you are Chicago in a lot of ways, and you are Chicago basketball forever. So definitely a great person to add to the list.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. All right. Yeah. So who's next on yours now?
Yeah, my next two, VC. You talked about his cousin. I'm going to go with Vince Carter. Really never seen a guy dunk a basketball like him. I'm sorry, MJ. I'm sorry, Dominique Wilkins. It's just this guy just absolutely blew everybody's minds at the 2000 Slam Dunk Contest with 3 essentially perfect rounds. I think he got thrown a 9 by one judge in one of the rounds, and everyone pretty much booed like out of that whole stadium. But to do the through the legs, 360 dunk, the windmills, the dunk that he had at the Olympics over the French center, Frederick Weiss, is forever a YouTube classic. Just Vince being absolutely ruthless, going to the basket with the ball in his hands. I remember one that he had against Alonzo Mourning in the mid-2000s where, it was him versus Alonzo in the playoffs. Alonzo, I think, was on the Nets at the time, probably in his twilight years or what have you. But, Vince just went up and cocked the ball back all the way to, almost his ankle, and then just kind of went right over the top of Alonzo Mourning, who was, an ultimate rim protector in his day. But, VC also could score. He put up 50 in the Eastern Conference semis against the Sixers. I think he had 8 threes in the third quarter or something of that sort. Just a guy who, filled out a stat sheet, was an absolute star in his prime in Toronto. And he actually got dogged, rightfully so, for kind of saying that he, took off games and, he didn't play so hard. And I think that really, stuck around with people for a good amount of time, most likely when he was with the Nets. But, I think Vince ended up, removing all doubts about him and kind of, wiping the slate clean when he just ended up playing, for 8 teams total over a 24-season career. I mean, just something that we don't oftentimes see in any sport, let alone basketball, where a guy's at that kind of longevity and finds a spot, on any team, and for whatever needs they may have. I think he almost, started to get into a mental space like a Grant Hill or like a Shane Battier toward the end, second half of his career, where, he was okay with being a role guy. He was okay with, sacrificing for the better interests of the team. And that's something I appreciate. I always had a soft spot for Vince regardless, but, kind of seeing where he took his career second half was like, hey, I'm a good person and I'm going to put the effort forth to show you that, any sort of, critiques that I got, midway through my career just really aren't true. The second guy that I have on my list is Steve Nash. I just absolutely love his ability to kind of pioneer the point guard spot and kind of transform basketball in that time period once he was, relieved of his duties with Derrick and the Mavs. I believe it was around 2004, 2005 when he, ended up signing with the Suns. But, he just built an offense that this game's really never seen in that time period where, defense was absolutely secondary, and it was just all about pushing, pace and spacing the floor and just dishing away, shooting threes, having a guy like Amari down low to kind of, clean up the mess or control the paint. And, he made guys better. He took guys that were cast-offs from other teams like a Matt Barnes or even like a Joe Johnson at the start, or, Raja Bell, or some of the, Grant Hill kind of, reignited his career. It was just his ability to take any single guy on his team and say, I'm going to make you a really credible NBA player by, the time you step in, by the time you step out, you're going to be signing a nice 2-3 year deal with another club. And, I'll never see you again, but, for the time that we had, it was real. And, they were always at the top of the Western Conference standings. They never got over the hump. I always felt bad about the Robert Horry game where he checked Nash into the boards, and Omari got a game for that, for entering the court or what have you. So that was a true disappointment in that time period. But I always just thought if Nash could just get one championship, that would just be just awesome. And he fell short with the Lakers when they tried to put that star team together. But Nash will never be forgotten, and he doesn't need the championship to cement his legacy as one of the greatest point guards to ever play the game.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Steve Nash is definitely somebody that's influential. I think I know KD I think he kind of wanted him as the coach, right, in Brooklyn. Really had a lot of respect for him. I think they talked a lot and chat a lot when KD was in the Golden State Warriors, and Steve Nash was like a consultant of some sort. So yeah, you got to respect that game. And then he's really changed. I think that Phoenix team really kind of brought things to the next level. I think I want to say those Kings team started the whole fast pace and all that, and a little bit of just having a lot more ball movement, I think was the whole thing there. And then Steve Nash and D'Antoni offense really kind of took it to the next level. Now you see a lot more of that kind of in all the teams kind of doing the whole spreading it out, and then doing some ball screens, and then maximizing those efforts there. So really a game changer, multiple MVP Hall of Famer. So, got a lot of respect for him for sure. And has also brought more attention to basketball in Canada. Now Canada is like a powerhouse for a lot of NBA talent now. Really has definitely put on his stamp on the game overall. And I love your pick of Vince Carter. Definitely so exciting to see him dunking for sure. But then how he transformed his career kind of as a dunker, very flashy and all that, to let me show these young bloods how it's all done and all that. So it was very nice to see his career kind of just to kind of take a full circle, if you will. So yeah, very much admire all that. Cool. And I think see my next two here. So you mentioned Robert Horry. He's actually one of my people here. Robert Horry. Oh man, yeah. I have a love-hate relationship with Robert Horry, but I can't get over the fact that he has more NBA championships than Michael. He's 7, right? So he's got more than some of these other Hall of Famers. Albeit he's not the main reason, but he's a big reason since he's Big Shot Bob and all. So probably, I mentioned a couple of the 3-and-D players before, with Shane Battier. And then I know you mentioned Matt Barnes and all of that, but I think he's he's 6'10", can guard, multiple positions overall, being 6'10", especially during, the 2000s and 90s, right? So yeah, he's probably, I forget which announcer kind of ridiculously he's the greatest defensive player of all time, but he almost kind of was he could definitely guard any type of player out there. Again, during that time, when power forwards, especially in the Western Conference, were pretty dominant with Tim Duncan and Kevin Garnett, right? So can guard those players, but then also had this skill set to shoot those threes and spread the floor a little bit, during those times with Shaq, and then also with Tim Duncan when Horry played with the Spurs. So very much admired his game overall. When he was with the Lakers, maybe not as much. That three, I remember Vlade Divac kicked it out and everything. It was a game 6, and then Horry, just being the cool person he is, took that ball and just, nothing but net, right? And I do love his answer when he said, when a reporter asked him, what goes through your head, right? When you hit those big shots, he's like, nothing. It's that's lethal. Love that. Just has that assassin mentality. So definitely love hate, but, really admired him. And, I definitely love the Spurs. So, during those years. So he was very, very much a big part on that. And then also I know he did a lot of things too, with the Houston Rockets, with Hakeem and all. So very much instrumental, I think, on championship teams during the 90s and 2000s. And then my next player here, definitely a Hall of Famer, probably one of the top 10 players of all time, Tim Duncan, big fundamental. I love his game. It is not sexy whatsoever. You almost kind of know what's going to happen. He's either going to do the bunker, the bank shot, or he always goes on his right hand, is what I've actually seen. So, but even though you might know what's happening, he's still going to knock it because he's practiced that thing like 1,000 times every day. So, really admire that. His very like I don't think people realize how good of a defender he was. Like multiple, like he's had I think like 15 all NBA defensive teams and all. So. And I think a lot of the advanced stats say he's like a top 3 defender of all time. So like, yeah, very much like very much underrated part of his game. People see him just as a really good, the mid range and the bank shots and all that, and great defense. Kind of talked about here and there, but like dominant defensive player. Especially in this modern day age with verticality and all that, really knew how to utilize the rules of the game there. Very much a consummate gamer, and admired how he was able to be the leader within the team, even though he's not the most vocal guy, right? But was able to lead that team and show the example that even though I'm like the best player or the most notable player on the team, I'm still going to put in the work, still going to put the effort, and my ego is not as big as yours and all that. So very much admired that team aspect and was able to help out, build that culture with Greg Popovich, who's now the winningest coach of all time, largely because of Tim Duncan, his efforts, his leadership, him and Manu and Tony Parker and, Kawhi as well. Like, such great teams there, and unselfishness within basketball. So yeah, those are my 2 picks there. What are your thoughts on those players?
Yeah, I was going to say Tim Duncan basically had the kind of NBA career I think a lot of guys would love to have, just from the sense of like, not only was he, arguably one of the best players of all time, and sometimes he really truly gets left out of those conversations, and it's incredibly unfair because, Kobe had the persona, Michael had the flash. I mean, it was kind of like a guard is usually in those conversations, if not, an all-time great center or something like that. But I guess what I'm trying to say is he was so quiet and so out of the press and out of everyone's minds that it's almost like that's the kind of career I think a lot of guys would love to have, because you just fly under the radar. You don't have to worry about all the BS. And it was kind of like, at the end of the day, he was just there to get the job done. And he did. He had 5 titles. And, I was really sad when he missed that. I want to say it was just like a little hook shot against the Heat that would have, sealed the game. I think Ray Allen came out and, hit that big 3. Mm-hmm. They got the Heat that title that year, but it, I think they split in their, one-on-one title seeking, matchups or what have you. But it was like, I just wanted him to get to that 6, and I definitely didn't want to see the Heat get, another fraudulent title. It's just kind of like, but those teams were a lot of fun. And, like you said, with Robert Horry, he was a big part of those Spurs teams. And, Big Shot Bob, I mean, you can't really knock him for, a guy with 7 titles. It's not by accident. I know he joined some great teams, but, those teams wanted him for certain reasons. And, he's kind of like a Steve Kerr in that way. Steve, I think, has 5 titles as well, but it was, because they knew he was a sharpshooter from 3 and we needed to get him. So, Robert Horry definitely carved out a great, niche for himself on those championship caliber teams. And, he was a good agitator too. I mean, I feel like without him doing that check against Steve, they wouldn't have probably gotten arguably to that finals that year. But in general, I mean, I think he just, did everything he required to win basketball games.
Yeah, for sure. Big Shot Bob, man. Yeah. So who's the next on your list there?
Yeah, the next on my list, big Chicago player, Dennis Rodman. Just absolutely loved the Worm growing up. The different hairstyles almost every single night. It was kind of like, what color is Dennis Rodman's hair going to be? And I think I was probably, 3rd, 4th grade or something of the sort. But I actually had a Bulls bumper sticker, growing up that, wasn't on our car yet. And I asked my dad if I could, if we could cut it out and basically, cut around in the back of my head so I could have some sort of patterns like Dennis Rodman. So my dad basically gave me a buzz cut, but then outlined the Bulls, logo on the back of my head. So I had this big bull on the back of my head, and, kind of attributed to Dennis Rodman and stuff in 3rd or 4th grade. So I just always kind of wanted to emulate the guy. I mean, he's kind of in the same camp as the Artest Barnes selections on my list, but it's just, you know, a guy who's going to dive into the stands. He's going to grab all the rebounds. He's going to piss off the opponent. You know, he's going to, you know, just emulate, you know, swagger, attitude. I think every team needs a guy like Rodman, just an agitator, an enforcer. And, you know, Dennis was highly skilled too. I mean, there's no reason why a guy 6'5" should be leading the league in, you know, in rebounds and, you know, defensive player of the year honors, you know, almost year after year. It was like, how does this guy do it? You know, I'd love to see him, you know, lead an instruction tape on rebounding. I would just love to know what he, you know, had in the back of his mind in order to get, you know, the balls that he did. But, you know, I just, for that last three-peat with the Bulls, that was the one I remember. Didn't remember the first three, but, you know, I just felt like that was the kind of, you know, player that kind of spoke to me in that run with the Bulls. And, you know, he married Carmen Electra. He, you know, wore dresses. I guess him and Phil decided that, you know, you can go out and do whatever the hell you want. Just be back for, you know, game time and, you know, keep your stuff together throughout the year. And I won't bother you. It's kind of what we watched in The Last Dance. But, you know, a guy who had some serious hardships growing up, overcame a lot of odds to, you know, make it in the NBA, and, you know, even won 2 with the Pistons before he, you know, got his with the Bulls. So, you know, got to give him a lot of credit, and not a perfect person by any means, but, you know, a guy that I think, you know, maximized his potential in the game. The other guy as part of my pair here is Steph Curry. You know, Chef Curry, I'd love, kind of like Steve Nash, a guy who just kind of was a complete trendsetter, and somebody who, you know, we were even talking about JJ Redick, guy who hit the 3 ball. It's, when I was watching him at Davidson in that, you know, that run up to, I don't know if, I think they got to the Elite Eight, I want to say, as a team. Just absolutely remarkable. And, you know, kind of love when you see a son, you know, come from a past, you know, pro player, legend, what have you. But, you know, Del Curry was somebody that I always watched on the Hornets and Raptors growing up as like kind of a 3-point specialist role player for those teams. And, you know, you kind of start to track that a little bit more carefully as they, you know, approach the pro game and things like that. So I always had kind of an eye on Steph, but definitely broke out at Davidson, broke out in that tournament. And, you know, I was kind of surprised when he went in the draft, even kind of falling. I think he went 8th to the Warriors. It was kind of like, I think everybody saw the talent. It was kind of like, why are you guys all passing on him again? And, you know, he got to the Warriors, smaller in stature. I believe he's 6'2", but over the course of his career, he's averaging, you know, around 25, 5, and 5 as a 6'2" point guard. Just absolutely ridiculous, the kind of things he can do on the ball, you know, in the basketball court. It's just, you know, pulling up from the logo, or, you know, shooting 90+% from the line, or 3% from 3-point, you know, line for his career. It's just all these different, you know, standards that I think we all got used to growing up as to what is expected or what are thresholds. He just completely broke down those thresholds, broke down everyone's kind of thinking around what it is to be a good shooter. I mean, it's, you know, we look at some of the greats in our time, Ray Allen, Reggie Miller, and it's like he's broken their records and he's younger than us. It's like, I just don't get it. So I think people almost have gotten desensitized to how great this guy is, to now it's like he doesn't even come up in MVP conversations. You know, it's like we're talking about Jokic and Embiid, and it's like, if we were starting NBA franchises today, those guys might be in our top 10 picks. But like, I think everybody would probably have Curry in their top 3 to 5, I would guess. But anyways, I'll stop there. Love the guy. What do you think, Wayne?
Yeah, so I'll start on Rodman. But yeah, Last Dance, holy cow. I remember seeing that, and I was like, I don't think my dad ever had a conversation about any of this with me. So I'm glad, you know, yeah, I didn't know about like all the Las Vegas trips as much, but then I was like, oh, that actually makes total sense. And then, you know, I think there was like that conversation on Twitter is like, whoa, there needs to be a documentary on his whole Las Vegas escapades and all that. So, but yeah, like anybody that you talk about that talks about, or, you know, who are teammates with Rodman, will say that Rodman is like one of the best conditioned and smartest players on the team. So, with all the, the hairstyles and, his weird antics off the court, like you can't knock on his hard work that he dedicates to the game. Like you said, like he really maximized, like there's no absolute reason why he ought to be being the leading rebounder in the NBA, apart from just being really smart and also being really well conditioned overall. So, mad props to him. Has definitely maximized his talents overall. All the all court stuff, antics, North Korea, all that fun stuff. Hey, we all do weird things in life, right? So his are just a little bit more different. But really admire his game overall for sure. There's a reason why he's a Hall of Famer, even though he doesn't average like 20 points. So Steph Curry, oh man. Yeah, I was about to put him on my list, but I was like, Pat, I know Pat's gonna put him on there, so I'm gonna give him props anyways too. Like I remember I took a trip out to San Fran actually just to watch him play, and I was like, oh man, this is amazing. So he's basically what everybody wants in a video game as a player, right? Like just shoots threes and all, and he basically is that, right? Like there's something, I don't know, with his hand-eye coordination and brain activity. Somebody's got to do some sort of studies on him. Like he's in a different planet with how he operates. It's apparently it's ridiculous. So like very much an underrated passer and dribbler too. I don't think that gets talked about enough, I would say. There's that one play, I think he was going against Chris Paul, right, where he kind of crosses him up a little bit and has him stumble. Like just ridiculous plays with regards to that, and then has evolved his game so much too. There was definitely coming out of college. I remember, Minnesota took 2 point guards, right? 2 point guards in that same draft before Steph Curry. They took I think it was Rubio and Johnny Flynn from Syracuse. And I was like, did you watch the NCAA tournament? Like this kid was like going crazy here. So, really changed the game. A lot of teams are now about that pace and chucking up threes out there. And a lot of that has to do with Steph Curry. So, you can't knock him up for that. I know there's a lot of the old school people being like, like now they have these like 9-year-olds chucking up threes from half court and all that because of him. But if they're making it, hey, the game isn't so bad. I think it's brought up a lot more skill now. A lot more bigs are shooting threes now. It's like, hey, that's great. These days it's like why you're being paid millions of dollars and all that as an NBA professional. Practice to shoot a little bit. So really admire what he's been able to do to change the game overall. So yeah.
I just had to look up the 2009 NBA draft just so I knew who in front of Steph. But here I'll just go over real quick. We have Blake Griffin. Blake Griffin went number 1. That's okay.
Yeah.
Hasheem Thabeet went number 2.
Oh man,
bust. James Harden went number 3. I think that's pretty fair.
Okay.
Tyreek Evans went 4 to the Kings.
One rookie of the year, but battled some injuries and all. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you're absolutely right. Rubio and Johnny Flynn went 5 and 6, and they were never heard from again. Besides Rubio, but
yeah, but not Steph Curry career, right? Like that was the whole thing.
Right. Obviously.
Yeah, like if you actually think about it, Rubio and Steph Curry would actually make sense somewhat, right? Like Rubio's not a great shooter. Who's the best shooter of all time? Him. Who's a great passer? To pass to Steph Curry a little bit more. Like, oh yeah. So they actually could have complemented, but never panned out. One with Johnny Flynn, who just couldn't match anything. So yeah. So.
Yeah, we'll have to do a review of what could have been the 2009 Minnesota Timberwolves and just go from there.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. So yeah, I think my last 2 top 10 favorite NBA players of all time for me. One player here was part of the '90 Bulls. Again, I like the other guy, right, where he kind of crosses him up a little bit. And, has him stumble, like just ridiculous plays with regards to that, and then has evolved his game so much too. There was definitely coming out of college. I remember, there was yeah, Minnesota took 2 point guards, right? 2 point guards in that same draft before Steph Curry. They took what? I think it was Rubio and Johnny Flynn from Syracuse. And I was like, did you watch the NCAA tournament? Like this kid was like going crazy here. So, really changed the game. A lot of teams are now about that pace and chucking up threes out there. And a lot of that has to do with Steph Curry. So, you can't knock him up for that. I know there's a lot of the old school people being like, you know what, like now they have these like 9-year-olds chucking up threes from half court and all that because of him. But if they're making it, hey, the game isn't so bad. I think it's brought up a lot more skill now. A lot more bigs are shooting threes now. It's like, hey, that's great. These days it's like why you're being paid millions of dollars and all that as an NBA professional. Practice to shoot a little bit. So really admire what he's been able to do to change the game overall. So yeah.
I just had to look up the 2009 NBA draft just so I knew who in front of Steph. But here I'll just go over real quick. We have Blake Griffin win number 1. That's okay.
Yeah.
Hasheem Thabeet win number 2.
Oh man,
bust. James Harden win number 3. I think that's pretty fair.
Okay.
Tyreek Evans won 4 to the Kings.
One rookie of the year, but battled some injuries and all. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you're absolutely right. Rubio and Johnny Flynn wins 5 and 6, and they were never heard from again. Besides Rubio, but
yeah, but not Steph Curry career, right? Like that was the whole thing.
Right.
So,
obviously.
Yeah, like if you actually think about it, Rubio and Steph Curry would actually make sense somewhat, right? Like Rubio's not a great shooter. Who's the best shooter of all time? Him. Who's a great passer? To pass to Steph Curry a little bit more. Like, oh yeah. So they actually could have complemented, but never panned out. One with Johnny Flynn, who just couldn't match anything. So yeah. So.
Yeah, we'll have to do a review of what could have been the 2009 Minnesota Timberwolves and just go from there.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. So yeah, I think my last 2 top 10 favorite NBA players of all time for me. One player here was part of the '90 Bulls. Again, I like the other guy, the Robin, if you will, Scottie Pippen. Probably, I think I was shocked when I learned like maybe a couple of years ago, like he never won Defensive Player of the Year. But when you talk about like best perimeter players of all, best defensive perimeter players of all time, how can you not talk about Scottie Pippen with that length and that agility and quickness, that tenacity that him and MJ were putting up on an every night basis. It was just killer. Like, yeah, like he would guard the best player and just, take them out basically. While also, dunking the ball, that famous dunk on Patrick Ewing. I love it whenever ESPN ever had him on, maybe not so much anymore, but whenever they had him on, right, it was like, oh yeah, multiple time All-Star, Hall of Famer, dunked really, really hard on Patrick Ewing. Loved it. So maybe not so much anymore, but whenever they had him on, right, it was like, oh yeah, multiple time All-Star, Hall of Famer, dunked really, really hard on Patrick Ewing. Loved it. But yeah, like really consummate, really just tenacious overall player, all around skill set, definitely developed, could it be argued because of Michael Jordan? Maybe not, but, definitely developed that skill level so that, can utilize his frame basically, so it just didn't go to waste. So, just loved him overall. And, I always remember that he would always play with the second unit for the Bulls, and he would be one of the reasons just why the teams were, or why the Bulls would always kind of get ahead or pull ahead more, was because of his efforts, his ability to, work with whoever the players were on the court, as a facilitator, and then, beat that bench up from the other team. So, very underrated in that aspect. Is he as good as Michael Jordan as Scottie Pippen has been saying recently? Probably not, but, definitely an all-around player, for sure. So, yeah. And then my last player on this list, he's still in the NBA. though he's been injured, pretty frequently and has been injured for basically all the season. Kawhi Leonard, you can definitely knock him on the whole, was it load management and all that. But really admire him as a player. I like his humility, but toughness and hard work that he showcases. What he was able to do in Toronto was out of this world. I still would have liked to have seen him, against the fully healthy Golden State Warriors squad, to see how that would have unfolded. I don't know, to be honest, if they would have beaten them, but I would have loved to have seen him and KD kind of go against each other. But they had a whole entire country on their back, and Kawhi during that finals was tremendous. Definitely brought some joy for me for sure during that time. I definitely admired what he was able to do also with the Spurs. This is definitely where I'm like, I want the Bulls to do something similar with Patrick Williams, right? To have all this veteran leadership around him to show him kind of how things are run and how to be a consummate professional. I'm hoping I see that from Patrick Williams, but with Kawhi, he had Manu near him. He had Tony Parker, and then we talked about Tim Duncan before, and a bunch of other players on the Spurs. So, and I do remember that they actually were going against the Golden State Warriors when they won 73 games and all, and he got hurt because what's his name hurt him or slid in there to do the closeout, and Kawhi Leonard stumbled upon his leg and injured himself, so was out for the series. But they were beating that Warriors team by 20 points or something like that when that happened. So who knows what could have happened there. They won 60 some odd games, so it's not like there was some sort of team that snuck in. This was a contender. They had LaMarcus and Tim Duncan still, and all those other players. So but yeah, love his game, love his persona. He's kind of a fun guy too. So just love his humility and his overall persona. So yeah. So yeah, what are your thoughts on Scottie Pippen and Kawhi?
Yeah, Scottie, part of the trio for the Bulls. I love all the Chicago Bulls of that era. Honestly, I'm not going to say a bad thing about any Chicago Bull from 96 to 99 or whatever. It's just kind of the most, or I should say 95 to 98, but the most nostalgic run. For any team that I've ever watched, especially at that age too, I was pretty impressionable. But, Scottie was, he was the glue guy. I mean, he was Michael's right-hand man, but he was also just the guy who could take absolute pressure off of MJ when the entire world was on him. And, Scottie, bona fide star in his own right, and he'll never get the credit he deserves. He will never get that credit. And it is too bad that Scottie's kind of started to lash out or, voice out about how he feels. Maybe there's other things going on in his life right now, or, he's getting to that age where he knows he can never go back and play ball, and maybe what's ahead of him isn't as exciting. So it's there might be just a confluence of other things going on around Scottie in his life, but I'm going to try to, eliminate all that kind of stuff when I think about the guy. But yeah, I mean, just a true all-star basketball player. A guy could probably play in today's game the 1 through the 4, maybe a 5 in a small ball era, but his game would definitely apply today. Had a dog mentality too, like you're saying, with the posterizing dunks. I know he got involved in some scrums too throughout his time with the Knicks and Pistons and other squads. But it's just that era of basketball was just so much fun to watch because all the players were pretty much dedicated to those franchises. They were it just felt like you could run the same team out 3 to 4 years in a row, and today that would just never happen. But it's in that era, you had the Heat, you had the Knicks, you had the Pacers, you had the Bulls, and it was it's just going to be a bloodbath every season. So just really appreciated watching those regular season games and playoff runs in that time. With Kawhi, he's an interesting guy. I mean, the only thing I don't get about Kawhi is it's like he's kind of like frustratingly quiet. Like I feel like Duncan is like naturally quiet and like naturally reserved, and I feel like Kawhi like suppresses his true personality in some ways just so he doesn't get in front of the line, in front of the spotlight. And sometimes it kind of comes across as unnatural. I don't know, it's just maybe my interpretation of Kawhi. Like, all that aside, I mean, his game speaks for itself. I mean, I don't even know who I want to compare him to, but he brings that defensive prowess to like the 99th percentile of like what's possible. And then he's also got just like a really great offensive game too. Mm-hmm. He doesn't do anything specifically like eye-poppingly well, but it's like he's going to fill out that entire stat sheet every single night. He kind of reminds me of like an elevated Jimmy Butler. Like he's a better version of Jimmy Butler, and Jimmy's an awesome player. It's just like you don't look at Jimmy Butler and say that guy's a 3-point, sniper, or he's the best rebounder in the game. It's like he just does everything really well, and it just accumulates. And he's also a winner. I mean, bona fide winner. So when you're winning titles and doing it for multiple franchises, like nobody can take that away from you. And it's just kind of sad to see what's happened with the Clippers. I mean, I'm not the biggest Paul George fan, but in general, yeah, I mean, I think everybody would love to see them be in the mix and kind of play to their potential and not just kind of flop out due to injury. But yeah, Kawhi's a stud.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think I remember watching this YouTube video about Kawhi, just to add on, of like him and his game being compared to like Kobe and MJ, because he actually spent a couple summers, I think, with Kobe to like figure out that mid-range game. And then who did Kobe kind of figure out and coordinate with all that? He figured out from MJ. So I kind of like to see that passing of the torch and all that too. But then, yeah, it's like, I see this reserve side, and I don't know if there's like unreserved trauma or what, but because I know like he had a similar thing with similar to Michael Jordan, right? With the whole, his father got murdered and all that too in Compton, I think, right? So yeah, definitely some things there, but yeah, you can't knock his game for sure. But yeah, I do like his quirky side. He definitely has a quirky side too. Yeah, I definitely encourage people to watch him and Serge Ibaka. I think they were eating testicles, like bull testicles or something like that. So,
I'm glad they were bull's testicles.
Yeah, I think it was like bull's testicle. Yeah, something like that. Some sort of testicle out there. So definitely not like a human. So he definitely has a quirky personality for sure, which probably was what made him fit into the Spurs. But yeah, a winner, very efficient player, Mr. Big Hands too. Like I think I saw that video of him and Shaq. So yeah, just I think as long as he's healthy and all that, I think him and like Steph Curry are probably my two favorite players in the modern day NBA, just because of what they bring to the table. So yeah.
Great picks. I'm gonna round it out with my remaining two here. This guy shares my last name. How could I not love him from the start? Reggie Miller. Just an absolute killer from the 3-point line. I mean, Michael's, if Michael was Batman, he was the Joker. It was kind of like, Reggie just had an attitude, a swagger to him where, he's going to come into Madison Square Garden, he's going to hit a three, he's going to look Spike Lee right in the face, and he's going to throw up a choke sign, something like, I watched his 30 for 30, later on in my, like, I would say like adult years or what have you, but just, too bad he never got onto the mountaintop and got, what he deserved. 2004, 2005 season, I think going back to it, talking about, Ron Artest, with Jermaine O'Neal, Steven Jackson, Ron and Reggie, that team was ready to go. I mean, they were ready to go. They were loaded. And it's just too bad to see, over the course of his career, he's constantly stopped by Michael and the Bulls and their greatness, and was totally happy about that. Like, don't get me wrong, but he always had like a soft spot for Reggie because, those teams were fun to watch too. Like the Davis brothers down low, Rick Smits, Derrick McKee, you had, Sam Perkins just kind of propped up in the corner, always ready for the three. And then you had, Jalen Rose and, Travis Best toward the, later years in his career there. But I think with Reggie, the reason why I kind of brought him up too is, I used to wear his jersey. That was the first jersey that I got as a kid, was a Pacers navy blue with the yellow and white striped jersey, and it had nowhere on the back. So in second grade, I decided to kind of fib a little bit, and I was basically telling kids in my grade that, Reggie was my uncle. Somehow, some way it kind of played. I mean, maybe second graders are just that cool. So I started saying that he was my uncle and this and that. And like a kid asked me if I could like have him sign his basketball card. So I basically took that card home and I asked my dad if he could just write Reggie Miller on the card. And my dad did, and not really knowing why I asked that. But anyways, that was one of my my wrongdoings as a second grader. But I always got a kick out of that. But no, I mean, I guess just to take the story home, I mean, a Hall of Famer, surprisingly only a 3-time All-NBA player, which I just thought was kind of mind-blowing, because I'm thinking to myself, if there are 3 teams of All-NBA, how did this guy only get on those 3 times? It's just like, who else was better than him perennially that he only got on that list 3 times? It just kind of, right. It just kind of messed me up. But in general, I don't think anybody would look at him that way as not being one of the greats of that era. And, just a guy that I, will always remember and think he was one of the pioneers for the 3-point, field goal. And my last guy, this is going to sound really cliche, and I don't care, but Michael Jordan is number 1 on my list. I mean, I'd be lying to myself if I didn't think that he was, just the greatest basketball player I've ever watched over the course of my life. Those years when it was him, Scottie, Dennis, Tony, all the rest of the characters on that team. I mean, just big shot after big shot, putting up 30, 35 a night, doing the flu game in Utah, his accolades, going down the line, 11-time All-NBA, 9-time defensive player, 6-time NBA MVP, 6 NBA championship rings. I mean, 36-5 averaging over the course of his career. And even when he got to the Wizards, he averaged 21-5-4 when he was 38, 39 years old. So it's just like, what did this guy not do for the game of basketball? And, looking at kind of everything he was for pop culture in the 90s too, the McDonald's commercials, Sprite, Gatorade, everything that we consumed, whether it be food, clothing, entertainment, it was Michael Jordan. And I would just be, I think I would just kind of attack my own credibility here speaking about my favorite players if I didn't add Michael to the list. So I'll leave him there. And the greatest Hall of Fame speech I'll ever rewatch, to this day forward. Maybe him and Dennis were the 2 that I probably love most, just kind of watching their speeches. But what do you think overall about those 2? And you definitely have some memories to draw on. But what do you want to say?
Yeah, I'll go with Reggie first. No, I agree. Like you got to think about the teams that went to 7, right, against the Bulls. It wasn't the 2 Hall of Famers at Utah, right? The Utah Jazz during the finals. It was, I think it was happened like maybe 2 or 3 times, right? The Pacers bringing it to 7 games against the Bulls. So like, there was always that like, oh, whoever won that series was probably going to win the NBA championship there, right? So yeah, like the Reggie Miller Pacers, late 90s and to that, Malice at the Palace. Like I remember watching the Malice at the Palace documentary and hearing about all that. It's like, Reggie was like, oh, this is going to be the team. This is going to be the team. And then all that happens and that just killed it. So, but yeah, like he matched Jordan on the clutch when it was winning time, right? So like there was those game winners that he had against MJ, during the Knicks, like he was a competitor. Like he's a scrawny kid and all that, can shoot the 3 and all, but scrawny, but he was a competitor. So you have to admire what he was able to do against the GOAT. So bringing them to 7 games, competing at the highest level. It was definitely one of those love-hate things for sure. But at the same time, I have mad respect for Reggie. And I think it's like definitely one of those things. And I felt the same way with Kobe. It's like the older they get, it's like you kind of just admire them, for all that for them being competitors and pushing themselves to the limit. And then, yeah, maybe they're slowing down a little bit, but they still got some game. They can still contribute. So really admire Reggie Miller overall. And now he's, probably setting himself up for like a Hall of Fame NBA commentator career too. So he's doing a really good job there too. So MJ, the GOAT, glad you ended on him. I was definitely like, yeah, it's too cliche to put him on there, but I get it for sure. Got the shoes. He's definitely changed the game. I have a portrait of him, his last shot as a Bull, kind of on my walls. And it's that statuesque, pose and everything that he had there too. It was not a push off with Byron Russell, FYI, but no, yeah, changed the game. Brought definitely much more to mainstream culture. Space Jam, still greatest movie of all time. The second one stinks. Sorry, LeBron. I don't know what else to say. I feel like anything that's been said for him has been said. But it's sad that he's not the greatest owner, maybe. It hasn't brought it to that same level, but he's still making shoes, still making that money, and eventually maybe he'll they can get some talent around LaMelo for the future. But really admired his game and what he was able to that Hall of Fame speech, that speech for during Kobe's funeral was really heartbreaking too. So it really just shows how much passion he has for the game. And then, I think what he saw with Kobe was a little bit of himself, right? That competitorness that they both had. It's really interesting to see what has happened. And I'm looking forward to seeing, if it'll be interesting if he actually, his Hornets actually do start winning some games, or a championship or two or something. So, yeah, love your list. Love this great overall talk. Any other words from you?
Yeah, I mean, I just think of some of the highest highs that I've ever had watching basketball, and just going to touch on Jordan again. It was just when he won those championships in Chicago, when we were kind of growing up and still kind of forming opinions about the world. It's just I can't get back to those kinds of highs watching the game of basketball like I did when Jordan was around. And just how exciting it'd be to even, pull out a pack of cards, buying a pack of cards at the store. And if you got a Jordan, you just knew right away it's going to be the hottest trade commodity at school or something like that. But it's just, guys like that, they don't come around too often. It's a pleasure to see a guy like, Kobe and, even LeBron, just to see a guy who kind of plays at that sort of level above all of his competitors. Mm-hmm. Where it's just extremely rare in any of the sports that we watch to really see a star in the making like that. So it was a pleasure to watch him play. But no, I thought this list was great. I mean, my thoughts are that, in general, if you look at both of our lists, it's not always the Michael Jordans of the world that are going to be, truly our favorite players, or even guys that, we remember 30 years from now. I mean, I feel like there are a lot of guys that are carving out niches in their game, or, sacrificing for their team as a veteran, or specializing in a certain component of the game that we'll, take notice of. And I feel like it's the guys that have that kind of, fighting dog mentality when they step on the court, where it's we just know this guy is locked in. He's all in. It's not about, his next business venture. It's not about, his next contract dispute or what team he wants to flip to next. It's these guys just emulated what it is to be, a true warrior, a true basketball player in today's yesterday's game. But how about you? Do you have any lasting impressions or anything?
Yeah, no, well, I was gonna say I liked your list. You definitely had this mix. I think both of us did, right? As maybe players, the what if players, right? That got hurt, played the game really well, but then still persisted, right? I think we both had. I had Derrick Rose. You had Grant Hill. Kind of had similar careers in that fashion, where they were really hot shots, kind of young and all that, but then stumbled on some injuries, and then things just didn't go the way that they wanted, but then, or that we wanted to, but then they were able to carve out their own careers going forward. So, really admire that. But and then, we both like dogs. I think that's a Chicago mentality too. Those tough guys, those assholes and all that will kick butt and all that for you. Really admire that. That's just that's the Chicago basketball style, I feel like. So yeah, glad that we had our own assholes on both of our favorite players list here. So hey man, it's awesome talking about this and about the basketball world a little bit, and all the players that we grew up watching. And I know we both kind of have some players here with Steph Curry, Kawhi still playing, hoping to see Kawhi back and all that. I think the game's just better overall with him playing. So, but yeah, love both of our lists, I think.
Yeah, when you said Chicago dogs, I was thinking, just don't order it with like, I just had a Chicago dog last Sunday, so it was just like
Wiener Circle, Wiener Circle or Portillo.
Yeah, I had to go with Portillo's, but in general, just good time talking about these topics. And if you're a listener out there and you're on Instagram, YouTube, whatever have you, leave a comment and tell us who your favorite player or players are. We'd love to hear your feedback or even converse with you on what memories you may have from the 90s, the 2000s, or present day. But, with that, Wayne Poix, Patrick Miller, we're signing off for Ball and Breakfast. And catch us next time. We'll be firing up a new episode soon.
Thanks, all.